Good morning on this beautiful day in Maastricht. My name is Tom van Veen. I'm the acting pro-rector of this university. We have members of the opposition. We also have 2 members online. So hereby I open this academic ceremony in which Chen Gong will defend the academic thesis Understanding the Drivers of Income Inequality in China, a multi-level distributional microsimulation analysis. May I invite you, Chen Gong, to present a summary of your study and the conclusions of your thesis in 15 minutes.
Thank you so much, Prorector. Dear Prorectors, dear members of the Corona, dear supervisors, and dear family and friends, in the following 15 minutes, I will shortly present the summary of my thesis entitled Understanding the Drivers of Income Inequality in China, a Multi-Level Distributional Analysis. So, as we all know that, income inequality is not a new issue, and it has long been recognized as a threat to social cohesion and economic stability. High levels of income inequality would lead to less social mobility and then slower economic growth, as well as this can also entrench poverty across generations, and more critically, it can hurt social stabilities. Well, there has been decades of research and interventions try to solve the issue of income inequality, but it remains a persistent, complex, and evolving challenge. One reason for this is that the forces driving inequality are not static. Income inequality is shaped by multiple interconnected factors, from labor market structures, returns on labor and capitals, to redistribution policies and demographic structures. And these influences constantly shift in response of both global and domestic changes. And the evolving landscape underscores the need for continuous and comprehensive research into the drivers of income inequality. Well, among all countries, China offers a unique case for studying income inequality, especially its post-2010 period, because after decades of rapid growth and rising inequality, the government shifts its focus towards inclusive growth. Through different social programs, fiscal reforms, and targeted regional development policies, these efforts have gradually reduced inequality since 2008. However, the story was not all positive. If we dive deeper on a regional level, we see that there is still stark differences between the regional income levels, which makes us wonder how the dimensions, the factors that we mentioned previously, interact with each other, and how do they collectively and separately contribute to the change in income distribution in China. So with these questions, we used household disposable income as a variable of interest in our analysis. And it includes the values from wages, farming income, capital, pension, subsidies, and etc., so that it can capture the real-life economic experience of household and individuals. And we also apply this microsimulation-based decomposition approach in all our empirical chapters, and it includes 3 key steps. The first estimation, we will run a series of nested econometrics model, try to model the contributions of different endowments, such as age, education, genders, to income composition, and it includes the level of the income received and also the choice of this income source. And secondly, we run the simulation and create this what-if scenarios by swapping between the parameters that we generate from the estimation phase between regions and years, and then to create this counterfactual distribution. And lastly, we will compare the actual distribution with the simulated income to identify the drivers. And this thesis is composed of 7 chapters, with 4 dedicated to empirical research. These empirical chapters examine the research objective from 4 distinct angles. Firstly, national, and then inter-regional, and inter-regional, and eventually we reach the regional convergence. In chapter 3, which is a national trend, well, we already found that the inequality has stabilized and even declined since 2008. However, this result was only drawn from the average income and also the per capita GDP, not by the household survey data, which we believe that it could be a more accurate reflection of people's economic condition. On top of it, the drivers behind this trend remains underexplored. So which all of this raises the question, was income inequality elevated during the 2010? And what were the main drivers of the changes in national income inequality? In this study, we use the data from the China Family Panel studies in both the 2010 and 2016 waves. So the results shows that national inequality indeed decreased between 2010 to 2016, alongside significant growth in both mean and median household disposable income. Well, among 4 dimensions that we tested as the drivers to the change in income inequality, labor market structure is the largest contributor to inequality reductions. And also we can see that they have uneven effects across the entire income distribution. The graph here on the right shows the changes in income percentiles from 2010 to 2016 relative to the changes in average income in those years. So basically, if this line is above the zero axis, it means that the income in this percentile has grown faster than the average. And if it's under it, it means the other way around. We can see that this is an example from the labor market structure effect, and lower and middle income households benefit more from this change. And from other graphs, we also see that the social benefit had a very limited effect across all income groups. While assessing the changes on a national scale offers valuable insights, it does not fully capture the complexity of inequality in China, given the country's vast size, diversity, and significant regional differences in both demographic and economic structures. And moreover, China implements the regional decentralized administration system, which would allow the regional governments to control over the budgeting and also the public services, which directly impacting the local economics and the social structures. Thus, understanding the province-specific trend is essential for a more nuanced view of inequality in China. In these studies, we chose 5 provincial-level municipalities as a representation of the diversity of China's economic and social landscapes. So each of them is chosen from the west, from the central area, from the east coast, and also from the northeast regions. In this analysis, we use the China Family Panel studies from 2010, in both 2010 and 2018 waves. And the finding reveals a very mixed trend in the change in inequality across China's regions. There are increases and decreases, and the degree of change varies significantly by province. And unlike the national results, changes in labor market structure and returns were generally unfavorable for the lower income household across all regions. As we can see from both of the graphs, on the left is one from Shanghai, and the right, the one from Gansu, you can see that there are very negative value for the low and bottom income distribution groups. Another important finding is the level of aging population, particularly in economic advanced coastal area. This is Shanghai's population pyramid comparison between 2010 and 2018, and we can see there is a stark increase right here in the later years. So potentially, this higher proportion of the elderly residents could increase the pressure on labor market and social welfare system, challenge the long-term economic stabilities. And as a matter of fact, it has already been starting to doing so. Well, since national inequality is shaped by both intra- and inter-regional disparities, it is very important to also look at the inter-provincial income differences. Well, this paper is inspired by China's development approach called trial and learn, where successful pilots are replicated and scaled up across different regions. And in this paper, we replicate this process using the microsimulation-based decomposition approach to examine how different regions might respond to the similar labor market structure and policies. The goal is to assess whether learning directly from other provinces can help narrowing the provincial income gaps. And we use the same provinces we chose from the previous chapter, but this time we compare it cross-sectionally, and we use Guangdong as a benchmark due to its economic diversity and leadership in development and policy. So the analysis reveals that there are significant income disparities across different regions. And the figure on the left shows the income differences between other provinces and Guangdong's income distribution. And we can see that Shanghai here is the black line. It has much higher income levels compared to other provinces across all income quintiles. And again, among the four-dimensional structure that we check for the driver as the driver to income inequality change, the return structure is the strongest driver to the difference in income levels across provinces. And by comparing between the simulated and actual distribution of Guangdong, and all four dimensions we checked for shows either fluctuated or large differences across all income distribution, which means that just simply by copy-pasting policies or structure from another province, we would not work. The local context matters very much in policy-making process. After examining the temporal change on the national, regional levels, and also the spatial difference across provinces, we now like to complete the research by examining the convergence across provinces over time on both average income and the inequality measures. We want to examine that whether the poor provinces are catching up, and if this change are at the cost of fair income distribution. To examine the level of the convergence, we apply the beta and the sigma convergence test. And then on top, to test for the contribution to changing income inequality, we add the income source decomposition as a comparison and also a robustness check against the microsimulation-based decomposition methodologies. So we found firstly that there is indeed income convergence. Poorer provinces are catching up to the wealthier ones using average income level as a measurement. And the urban-rural gap is ranking notably between 2010 and 2018, which is great news. But if we zoom into the rural changes, the rural incomes are converging across provinces, but inequality within rural area is actually increasing, suggesting that there is growing disparities among rural households. And when looking at the income source, labor market distribution remains the most significant drivers to the changes in total inequality across regions. Based on our finding of this thesis, we suggest several key policy interventions to address the income inequality across China. Firstly is to promote equitable labor market reform. As we see from basically all empirical chapters, that labor market is one of the main drivers to the differences in income inequality across provinces, within province, and also income level across provinces, which means that improving formal employment and equitable wage structure across provinces is actually aligned with both national growth objective and the regional needs to mitigate regional disparities. And secondly, we will propose to prioritize educational investment, especially in the underserved regions. Because from the estimation phase that we examined in all the analysis, we see that one of the key contributor is actually the education level, is one of the biggest contributor to the level of income you can increase, also the better choice of the occupation and in the industrial choices for your work. So as a matter of fact, investing in education in the long run will definitely benefit the social distribution in a more equitable way. Lastly, but not least, strengthening social protection is another proposal we're trying to make, especially the pension and safety net system within China nationwide. We already know that there is a growing aging population in China. So pension will be one of the main income sources for a lot of family in the future. And now it has already been growing for the province like Shanghai and also the provincial municipality like Shanghai and Liaoning. And then on top of it, there are people who are not enrolled in the pension system in China in the rural areas. Social safety net will be so important for them to have a decent living status within China and also in the long run, a more equitable income distribution. That's all for my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. I will give the floor back to the proactor.
Thank you for your presentation. The opposition will be opened by Professor Monen, Professor Emeritus of the Econometrics of Technological Change at UNU Merit. And Professor Monen was chair of the assessment committee of this thesis.
Thank you, Prorector. Dear candidate, dear Chen, well, congratulations first. I know this has been a long work, and you have reached a stage where you have assembled a certain number of chapters looking at different dimensions of inequality in China. I would like to ask you a question about methodology. I had a little bit of a difficulty still to understand what exactly is the household generation income model that you use. Could you explain in a few words what is the difference between that approach and the approach of an Oaxaca-Blinder decomposition, or the what is it again? What you call JMP, John Murphy Pierce, and the Dinardo Fortin-Lemieux decomposition. To what extent does your model do a decomposition which is different from theirs? What is the difference in these methodologies?
Great. Highly esteemed opponents, dear Pierre, thank you so much for your question. And then indeed, the methodology is quite a complex part of this research, and I spent quite some time trying to understand it and trying to understand how different methodologies from the previous studies and contributes to the involvement or we see the improvement of this methodology. So to answer your questions more directly, the Oaxaca and Blinder decomposition method is actually how we that's the start of this kind of creating the counterfactual distribution to compare differences between variables as to the income changes across different groups. But what they did is that they run the regressions and then they swap also the parameters to some extent, but they only like looking at the average income. As a matter of fact, then the paper they published both studies the gender differences in income levels, in wage income levels, and what the results are just basically there is a gender difference in income they can receive, and female earns less than male, but that's it. And then on top of that, there are also other methodologies that we mentioned in the methodology chapter as the foundation of this one. Some of them have also run similar in terms of looking at the entire income distribution, not only the inequality measure, like or the more aggregated measure, like income inequality or the average income, but those methodology they have either only considers the difference in the beta, so the parameters when you run the regressions, or they do not account for the higher level multi-dimensional factor that may interact to each other and driving the changes in income distribution. So the other methodology you mentioned that they only swap the parameters, they didn't account for the error terms in the distribution. But in our methodology, we account for all of them. And on top of that, this methodology, when I expand that in the 3 steps, the first one, when I talk about the nested econometrics model, what I mean is that I will have a series of variables, things like, I will give one example, that if this person is a binary choice model, if this person is either in a off-farm work, so they work in the formal labor sector or not, this will be run in a series of regression for female, male, single female, married female, all of that. And then after that, this information, the estimation for this variable, this in-work variable, will be contributing to the next regression analysis, which it will determine the level of the income they can receive. And also in my case, that I also added in the household level income they can get, whether they have farm income or not, whether they have the capital income or not. So it will be contributing to the next regression that we followed step of labor market changes, return changes, and then social protection changes. And then after that, we do a reweighting for the demographic structure. So in our case, what I want to say in a nutshell is that we have more information involved, and then we have more layers that we can account for the interconnection between all those variables instead of just like one single regressions that tests for one single resource of income. So that's the reason why we see that our methodology is way more comprehensive, and then we account for way more information that are existing nowadays that contributing to changes in income inequality and income distribution compared to the previous methodology that you mentioned. I hope this answers your question. Sure.
An additional question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, go.
Because in the formulas that I saw there, the parameter xi, your parameter that you estimate, there's only one parameter. There is not a parameter xi1 and xi2 for 2010 or 2018, or for the actual distribution and the counterfactual distribution. That's why I was wondering, in the O'Haka-Gleiner decomposition, you have a part of the explanation which is due to the change in the variables, and another part which is due to the change in the parameters. So where is the change in the parameters in your formula?
Yes, thank you so much for your questions. I think you also mentioned that in the feedback, and I have changed that in the writing. I think there is a part that I should expand further. Actually, that was just the general representation of the form. And when we generate the parameters, we run the regression separately. So that was just general form that representing all the distribution, what I try to say, because in my empirical chapters, I run it for the national income distribution, and then I run it for all the provincial income distribution for 5 provinces within and across. And then since the methodology chapter is a more general chapter that applies to the following empirical chapters, I just made a brief saying that, okay, that will be the formula, or that will be the form for all the distribution that or the regression that we run in the future. But it does not mean that that's the same. It's actually different. It's just a simplicity, the representation of it. I'm sorry that I confused you, but I corrected in the book. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. The opposition will be continued by Professor Zimmermann. Professor Zimmermann is honorary professor at UNU Merit, and Professor Zimmermann was member of the assessment committee of this thesis, and Professor Zimmermann is online.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Dear candidate, I also join the congratulations to your work. It's a nice product, and also I enjoyed very much your clear and informative presentation. Now, my question aims more at the attempt to bring you to more reflect your overall findings in the face of the issue of external validity. Now, you see, when we do empirical research, we use data from a different period, and the question is it appropriate to do very long run predictions or conclusions? Your finding is very clear. I mean, the policies have been very effective. Income rose and inequality decreased. There were some regional differences, of course, but 2 important issues have been instruments are like housing policies, education, and so on. Now, the period you were choosing is related to policy of the Chinese government, so that is useful. But of course, policies are effective only some period later. Now, I was first a little bit confused about the book says 2010 and 2016. I just checked it again, but your presentation says you compare 2010 and 2018. So it would be important to know whether this is a typo in your book or where I was confused. The other issue is if you look at, that's why external validity, if you look at the current situation in China, so far I understand the discussions of today, we have huge problems with very high youth unemployment. People say at the moment about more than 21%. A lot of these people, as we know, have college or university education, so they were educated. And the other issue, the housing market is huge, is heavily under trouble. And this all has, of course, inequality effects, maybe in a complex way. So how do you see your study, which is of value for the period you're looking at, is of value, so to speak, in the more long-run perspective under new shocks and issues?
Yeah. Highly esteemed opponents, thank you very much for your questions. I think because of the connection, there are part of your questions I did not fully get. So I will ask to repeat the questions, and you see that if I understand the question correctly, and if not, I will have to ask you to repeat the question once again or rephrase it if I may. Then the first question you ask is about the confusion between the year that we used in the analysis. And you mentioned that you saw 2010 and 2016, but then in part of my presentation, you also say you see the comparison between 2010 and 2018. And as one of that question is, yeah, correct. And then the second ones, you mentioned that there has been an increase in the unemployment rate in China nowadays, and together with the housing market issues, and then it may all exacerbate the income inequality in China nowadays. You're asking me for my opinions and also my understanding whether my research have contributed to the understanding of those two effects, and if not, if I have any opinions towards it. Is it correct?
That's fine so far, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you. Let me answer to your first question first. Well, for the national, we have 4 empirical chapters. So the first one is national, and the second and third one are intro and then inter-regional, and then inter-provincial, to be more specific, and then the last one is a convergence. So the first national paper, we indeed use the data from 2010 and 2016 as a comparison, because firstly, at that time when I did the analysis, the 2018, which is the latest wave available for the China Family Panel Studies, was not available by that time. So I can only use 2010 and 16. But another reason why I kept that and didn't improve to different years for the national analysis is also because that if you know that China has this 5-year plan every 5 years, and then it will change in different strategic approach or a policy directions for the entire country as a guidance. And then 2010 and 2016 perfectly catch the pre and the post phases for the 11th 5-year plan, which emphasize on inclusive growth and promoting social protection changes, and then raising income levels for the undereducated and in rural area, etc. So I kept that for the national analysis. But then later on, we move on to the provincial analysis, the later years available. And then, on the provincial level, I'm more prone towards to catch the latest effect that we can catch. So I kept the 2010 and 18 comparison for all the regional and provincial analysis. So I think in the paper that I specifically mentioned which year I used, I know there might be even better if I can have them synchronized with the same year, and even in the future that I continue work on this, I would definitely do so, and to see that how this contribution on the provincial level actually contributes on the national level. It would be very interesting to see that. But so far, that's what we have for this PhD thesis. And as for your second question, that indeed unemployment rate, especially the post-pandemic phase and the housing crisis, are biggest issues for China nowadays. You read it all across news and every day for all the provinces, all the regions in China, and that's indeed an issue. And in our case, that we were able to model both the unemployment effect and also, well, to some extent, unemployment effect, and also the housing effect in our analysis. So for the unemployment, for the national paper, I have a specific variable generated to test for the unemployment rate. So we have things like education, this regression. We have things like education, gender, regions, hukou status, which the household registration system in China is very important for people being underemployed or what type of working condition they have. So all of that will be run towards the dependent variable, which is the unemployment status. So I have that on a national level to test for it. And then the effect we consider as a factor effect, and is included in the changes in the labor market structure over a year. And what I remembered is that it has contributed to some extent the changes in the increase in income inequality. However, there is a tendency in China that people do not report for unemployment. So they think that is not something that is so positive to show. And then also the unemployment benefit is not so comprehensive. And then even if they go report that they're unemployed, there's no subsidies and there is not so many choices for further education and skills training. So there is indeed an under-report on that. I doubt maybe if we have a more accurate data from the administrations and from the government, it could work better. But from the household survey, we only catches a very small percentage of the population report they are being unemployed. And then we move on to provincial analysis. The thing is that the provincial analysis for some provincial municipality like Shanghai, there is not so many people being unemployed, at least during those 2 waves we tested for. And if we run this model separately, it will do not have enough variables to test it for it. And then because of the reasons I mentioned about from the national changes, I combine the unemployment into the definition of inactive in labor market. So for the people who need to care for the family, and then for the people who are, well, not pursuing education anymore, but also just choose to stay at home, but not really as the ILO definition is being unemployed, I can combine them all together so we have enough variables to test for it. And this inactive actually, well, because it's, well, to some extent, it contributes to the wage differences, disparities. But for when it collectively on the household income distribution and the differences, it does not really change that much. But I do believe that nowadays, this could be an even bigger issue. And even if we have more up-to-date information, I would love to see how this contributed changes, especially what you mentioned with this skill, this education, and then the labor market mismatch is actually one of the topics that was very interested at the beginning of my study, and that will be interesting to see that. And the approach to the housing effect, we also capture the housing effect in our analysis. And then in the household disposable income that we define is actually adjusted household disposable income we have with income from all income sources that I mentioned, like wage, farming, capital, pension, all of that. And then we deduct the housing cost from firstly mortgage and also the renting cost, because we think that in China, household is this residence and also buying a house, renting a place is one of the biggest contributions to how much, to some extent, how much money you get to spend, because that's more a fixed cost instead of a choice. So we have included that in the analysis. And then indeed, if you look into the factor contribution under each dimensions, it's one of the big contributors. And especially in places like Shanghai, it's really, for the locals, they do not have to buy apartments and spend extras because they just inherited from their families. But for the external migrant, and then that's part of the biggest cost for them. And then I do think that in the future, this housing crisis will be an issue because some capital income also coming from it, people investing in second housing and for renting. And if there is no income from that, they will probably be in debt. And then but so far, we see that it has already contributing to the increase in income inequality across different provinces and also on a national level. I hope my answers are suitable for your questions.
Not fully. I mean, the issue you argue, so far I understand your chapters, that more education is good and everything is fine, so to speak, loosely spoken. Now, if I look at nowadays situation, we have lots of unemployment among highly educated. And well, people argue that this is structural. If it's structural, it should be part of your model. Yes, I mean, COVID is something different. We could not guess that this came up. This is a shock. But structural education is a long-run situation. So was this a mistake? And have you predicted it? If yes, then why was it more? Was the world this way more equal? I mean, I don't understand that message in this context.
Yes, okay. Thank you so much for the justification. I can further answer to your question like this. I think in the policy proposal I made, I say that we should further invest in education for the underserved regions, because in chapter 4, in chapter 4, when we compare the different income levels, income inequality within the provinces, you see that there is a stark difference between the educational attainment. So in the provinces, a provincial municipality like Shanghai, there's over 60–70% of the population who have higher education degrees. But in the provinces like Gansu and then Henan, which they are more like less developed, and they rely on agricultural as their part of the main income sources, well, the level of the education for them is extremely low. And then it's still, I remember that in 2018, there are less than 10%, but above 5% of the population who are still illiterate, not for the older generation, but even for the younger cohort. And that's the issue. So when they are not educated in that way, that can be considered as illiterate, it will definitely kind of constrain their potentials to develop, right? Even though that they are matching job market, like there's occupational choices, industrial choices, and then you won't be able to take it because you don't have the skill set for it. And then if you see the regressions that we run for each province, and then you can see that the level of the income, the contribution for the tertiary education, the highest that you can see are from Shanghai and Gansu, which is a less developed area. So people who are educated in that term, they get a really good job compared to their other counterparts in the province, because that they are the only one who are qualified for it, maybe working for the government or working for some of the international firm in the region, even though that might not be so many. But that's what I'm trying to say, is those are the people we need to improve. I'm not just promoting that every single body needs to get further education, like get a PhD or something, but it's actually for those underserved region, and this is still a very important factor. It's not only contributing to the wage increase, but it also contributes to things like if you're able to apply some more higher technology in farming. Maybe even for that, you're able to do that with some education training, secondary skill training per se. So that's the point I'm trying to make in my thesis. I hope this answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The opposition will be continued by Professor Lee, Professor at the National Social and Economic Modelling Centre, University of Canberra, Australia. And Professor Lee was also a member of the assessment committee of the thesis, and Professor Lee is available online.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So first of all, I would like to congratulate you on completing the research on inequality issue in China. And thank you for the insights you have provided in the thesis. I have a question about the potential policy implications and also the policies you analyzed. In chapter 6, you highlighted the trend of the convergence in average income, and with the rural area in particular, showing the faster convergence rate during the study period. As you also have explained in several other chapters during the same.
Something with the connection, I guess. No information about what is going on, or whether we have to wait, or. We can come back. So I suggested we continue, and then we go back to Professor Lee later. Yeah? Okay. Okay. Then the opposition will be continued by Professor Gassman, Professor of Social Protection and Development of UNU Merit.
Dear candidate, also from my side, congratulations with your thesis, where you gave a rather detailed account of these existing and changing inequalities in China. But I also think most importantly, you really try to tease out the main determinants of income inequality in China as a whole and within and between the regions. And the latter is particularly relevant given these vast differences in the characteristics of the various regions in China. However, some of your methodological choices and discussion of the results also triggered some questions on my end. Let me start with the first question. You explicitly account for demographic factors as a possible determinant of income inequality. That includes, if I understood correctly, the level of education, household composition, and household location. And the effect of these combined demographics varies across provinces. At the national level, it seems to benefit, let's say, the richest quintile. But I have to think about, there is this infamous one-child policy in China. It was only abolished in 2016, and I was wondering what role China's demographic policy actually played. To what extent and in what way do you think this policy has contributed to increasing or decreasing income inequality in China, and also might explain some of the regional differences that you observe? How lasting will this effect be? So in other words, what do you expect for the legacy of this policy? Thank you.
Highly esteemed opponents, dear Franziska, thank you so much for your question. So I think this is a very interesting question. Actually, we account for the demographic effects in both actually across all different dimensions, but particularly the demographic structure is accounted for as one separate dimensions. So we applied a reweighting technique to see that there's different weights for the demographic characteristic we account for, including the household heads, gender, and then the size, and also dependency ratios for elderly, and then also for the younger generations, and then things like what I remember, maybe whether they're employed, and there's many factors that are included in this demographic structure that we tested as a driver to different income inequality across provinces. So what I'm trying to phrase it in a better way is not to be so repetitive about this. So you mentioned this one-child policy, and yeah.
Look, there are all these variables in there. What I do not get out of this, because if I would only like to see now, really, let's say I don't know which would be the appropriate variable. Is it household size? Is it the demographic composition? Is it the dependency rate? Because for me, everything is demographic. Part is an amalgamation of all these different factors. So. But I really am interested, is it possible with the model that you have estimated, can you say something? Can you distill this effect? If you look at obviously you have 2010, then this policy was really in place. And then you look at, let's say, 2018, after which it has already 2 years after which it was abolished. So I also think that there should be some kind of a difference, right? So also, would that be, I don't know, would it be visible? Because somehow I expect it plays a role, right?
Sure. I understand the question in a better way. So first, I want to say that although that this one-child policy is being abolished in 2016 as a national, basically, policy, but then the thing is there's always a time difference in when you have the policy out and when you actually implement that policy on a regional, actually provincial level. So since our data, especially for the national one, only captures information, it's collected in 2016, so it's information from 2015. And then I don't think for the national one, we are able to catch this one-child policy change. However, I think for the regional one, it's definitely part of this issue. But I want to say that, firstly, for the demographic structure changes, I want to say that, yes, it's a collection of all different demographic information. But in our case, since we also have other dimensions and labor market is one of the focus, so I didn't disentangle the contributions for each demographic factors into how the changes on income inequality and income distributions. But it's possible to do so. And one of the the authors we have worked together did that on Lithuania, I think they did it. And then they particularly focus on the demographic change and how it contributes to the changes in income in level. So that's part of the suggestion that I got from a supervisor as well, like in the future research. That would be very interesting to see.
I know, but I'm sure you can think about a little bit. I know it's not there, but now let's just, how should I say, look a little bit into the future. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what happened to the fertility rate in China, but I'm sure you know about that. Mm-hmm. So, but I just assume, because so there will be families will have more children, I expect. So this would also mean that there are larger families, which also means maybe this has an impact on the income because somebody needs to take care and stay home or whatsoever. Exactly. What for the future, let's say in 10 years from now, if you would do, let's say, repeat the analysis with data from 2028, something like that, would you expect that so abolishment of this policy will you be able to measure? No. Will you see this? Will this increase or decrease inequality at large, but also maybe between the region? I just want you to hypothesize a little bit based on your knowledge.
I will. I mean, let me answer. Firstly, I want to continue what I had in the paper. Basically, this one-child policy, the family size, we accounted for in all the dimensions. So the family size and also dependent ratios are one of the independent variables that are included in the regression, like whether the farming, the level of income this family can receive, and all of that. So they are accounted for in this, the family size per se, not the one-child policy, but the family size per se. And then it actually has very negative influence on the household income that they can get, because we are doing the equivalized household disposable income, which is deducted by the number of the family size, of course. And then if you have more kids, and then if you have more people who are not in work, in labor, getting income, of course, if you deduct it, you will have fewer incomes on a family level. So that's being addressed in the paper for those 2 years, and in the future, what I want to say. So in the future, I think first of all that the lift of the one-child policy did change the demographic structure, at least from my understanding and my experience. So I have some friends and family, they have the second child, even the third child as a decision. However, I think you can really still, I might be conservative. I think it's very hard to just say that one-child policy, the abolish of it, will change the income in a certain way, definitely this direction or that direction. And it's always in combination with whether your family members get more opportunities to be employed in a higher paid job or anything else. Things like if you have your family member, maybe in China, we really raise family, like the elder generation, your grandparents taking care of the kids, so the family won't be, they don't need to drop up from their employment as a compensation to take care of the family. So there's all different components that interact with this abolishment of the one-child policy. And from what I see right now, that it's still a choice quite not so extensive. So people are conservative about having a second child due to the very high cost for raising a second child in China, because the mentality is quite different. You want to make sure all the kids have the resources they need to have for education and for everything else. So people are still kind of conservative about this. Yeah. So I would see the effect would exist definitely, but in 10 years, it might be a short period to look into, maybe longer than that. I'm sorry. I hope this answers your question.
Thank you. I see that Professor Lee is back again, so we give it a second try.
Apology for the technical glitch. Hope you can hear me this time.
Yes, we can.
Okay,
yes.
So we were talking about in your chapter 6, you highlighted the trend of the convergence in average income, and with rural area particularly showing a faster convergence rate during the study period. You also noted in some other chapters that during this time, there have been significant government policy aimed at promoting regional development, such as Go West initiatives and Northeast Revitalization Plan, etc. Do you think any specific features of this program have substantially contributed to your results? And any of these features are more like a one-off effect, or are they something that can be replicated by the other provinces to foster a more equitable income distribution?
Highly esteemed opponents, thank you so much for your questions. I have to repeat the question again because of the connection, I'm sorry. And I think you're asking for the difference between the chapter 6 that we have about the rural convergence, and there is a convergence on the average income levels for the rural areas between provinces. But then there's also other policy that I mentioned in the previous chapter, like Go West, and we know about revitalization of the Northeast area. And you're asking that whether all these policies contributes to the differences in the convergence, and also the changes maybe on the kind of divergence of the inequality levels between or among rural income inequality. Is that the question you're asking for?
Yes, I also want to know whether you think this is a one-off effect, or is that something can be replicated by other provinces as well?
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. Okay, so to answer about that, I think definitely this convergence is one of the factors, one of the outcome from the previous policy that we mentioned about the Go West and all of that. And we all know that China is quite a policy-driven country, and if there is a will, there is a way. And then there will try a lot of different methods trying to make it happen. So we can see actually in the raw data, when I run this analysis, you see that, well, the different happen is rural area like in Gansu, the more remote areas in the west part, their increase in the average income level is actually faster. And then, but rural areas in the provinces that is less important, per se, I have to say less important in terms of the strategic plan. And then their income, the increase level is not that significant compared to those who are the targeted regions in China. So I would say definitely different policy contributes to this convergence on the average in rural income levels. So this is my first answer. And as terms for the changes in the income inequality level between rural regions, there is divergence and there is kind of like enlarging, but this also calls for, well, I say that the kind of like the downside of the policies in China, since it's such a vast, such a large country, there's never a way that you just go to that household and think that that's what I'm gonna do, and I have a perfect measurement like what we learned in social protection courses, this mean tested ways, and just to target perfectly or in a way that for the household who are in need. So there's always inclusion and actual exclusion error. So some of the household in the rural areas, they are able to benefit a bit more from all of this policy, and some are less that in a certain way, which means that, well, there is a collective increase in terms of the average income levels, but then the distribution within is problematic. And then this is actually one of the policy implication I also proposed in the final chapter, to say that we need to have a better targeted plan to solve this kind of issues. And then, sorry, I forgot about the second question. Oh, wait, oh, okay. Sorry, I'm so sorry, but can you repeat the second question that you asked?
Do you think those of the policies are creating one-off effects, or is that something can be easily replicated?
Yes, I think to some extent, the measures, what we see in the paper, could be considered as a one-time effect. But as also mentioned, that China have this trial and run kind of like a policy framework development plans, that if this is effective, it will be memorized, it will be documented, and it will be implemented by the other areas as well. So if you think that way, it could be replicated, maybe not for the same area, because of course, after one set of the policy, we have the behavioral change. This is part of the changes in all policies. So you can say if it's bad, it's repercussion, and if it's positive, it will be like advantage in the future. So the dynamics within this region will change. And then I would say that in the future, if I only copy paste the same method, a same plan for the same area over and over again, it won't be able to work. That's my opinions. So you need to update, you need to improve on the policy that you have for certain areas if they have already implemented certain set of policy that you think are effective. So that would be my answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. The opposition will be continued by Dr. Kan, assistant professor at the Adana Alparslan Turkish Science and Technology University.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I really enjoyed. Congratulations, firstly. I wonder, I looked to your thesis and you grouped the characteristics of to be decomposed into the demographic. And I wonder, have you considered splitting to gender? And are there any difference gender over time and regions in your country? This is my first question. And my other questions about your framework scalable. I wonder, can we adapt your framework to other countries like Turkey and Indonesia? They have diverse from your country. I wonder this. Thank you.
Esteemed opponents, thank you so much for your question, and it's very nice to meet you in person. For your first question about the gender effect, indeed, we run the regressions for different genders in terms of their labor market status and their income levels. So if you see in the general appendix, you can see that we have information about female who are single, female who are married, and also male, like just in general. And then all of this results in terms of the beta we see, the parameters we see in the regression, you see that the contribution of each effect are quite different. And then for within gender, things like female, of course, in some provinces, for them compared to their male counterparts, the returns to their education level, their tertiary education, is actually more significant than the male counterparts. Maybe because there are like scars in terms of the education achievement, like female achieves previously, but hopefully not nowadays anymore. And then on top of it, we also have the gender, this variable included in the regression as a independent variable as well in terms of the household level income. So if the household head is a female, or if it's things like if it's the men breadwinners, and different type of definition that we also include this gender component. But I have to say that I do not distinguishly just focusing on the gender effect in this term in my analysis. It's just part of the contribution in the bigger pictures that are contributing to all of these dimensions separately. So, well, that would be very interesting to see again. But I will have to say that at least to the future research. And then as a second question, you say that if I can use this model and could be adopted for other countries, and I think we already did. And then we have that for Turkey, and we have that for Indonesia. It comes from one of the previous PhD cohort graduates from our department, ARIP, and then he already did this model to some extent for Indonesia and India. I think they all show very positive effects. I mean, in terms of if they're able to really capture the drivers behind this change in income distribution. I think it indeed is very helpful. This is a very general, very useful model that can be adapted to very different countries and then very different scenarios. All you need to do is that you need to have a clear definition of the variables that you want to include. And then, of course, you need to adjust to this logic flow, like which variables will lead to the other. This may vary from different country. As what I got is there a significant difference from the European countries and then in China, since in European countries we have more accurate information on the taxation. Like I'm not able to include that part in my analysis since we don't have that. And also the microsimulation part could be more useful even if you have more detailed information of all the household demographic information, like all of that. And then you can really disentangle each of the effects. Maybe a lot of work, but you are able to do so for the generalization or to the general outcome for how it changes in terms of income levels and income distribution. Yeah, so I think it would be interesting. We can also run some cross-country comparison. We did that for a more like just Europe in general between the UK and Ireland, and then I think between UK and Ireland. And I think it would be interesting if we can do that between a European country and then another like more developing countries. Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to see that actually. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I must say you can finish your sentence, but you did already, so we are just very well in time. Chen Gong, the time appointed for defending your thesis has passed. The degree committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and your defense. I request that you and your company await the results of our deliberations and our return in this room.
The PhD defense has now ended. The degree committee will debate the candidate's performance behind closed doors. This process usually takes about 10 minutes.
Southside, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. I know you know that I can't read your mind. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. Cause I'll go the extra mile. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. On the dash, got my laces tied. Long road, I don't waste no time. Break rules because fate decides. With the team and we chase the light. I make a move, fall down, shake it off. I hate to lose, bad branch, break it off. No room for negativity, praise and love. Prepare for deep part cause we're taking off. Take the mileage, traveling so far from home. Gathering knowledge, other connections. I put the time in to get everything I ever hoped for. It's a challenge and we all in. It's a better future that we go for. And even though these nights seem long, I know that I am never on my own. Know you won the battle once you've grown. Southside, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. Cause I'll go the extra mile.
Please be seated.
Chen Gong. The degree committee here presented has assessed the quality of your thesis and your defense. In view of its positive verdict and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. Professor Donoghue is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom. Thereafter, Dr. Niemey will deliver the laudatio. I invite your supervisor to now take the floor.
Please all rise.
Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity? The microphone.
No.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, take two. Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent, and responsible?
I promise.
Good. So by the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, Chen Gong, the degree of doctor and grant you all the rights attached by custom and law. And as evidence of this, I now present you with the degree of certificate signed by the rector, the secretary, and the other members of the committee and affixed with the official seal of the university. Well done.
Thank you so much. Please be seated.
Dear Dr. Gong,
Thank
let it sink in for a second. So let me see if I can say that correctly. Gong Chi.
Oh, thank you.
So, dear Chen, today marks a significant milestone in your career journey, and it's really a pleasure to be celebrating this moment with you. As I reflect on Chen's path, I'm reminded of a memorable interaction we had early in 2020, which encapsulates to an extent the thoughtful and proactive nature you've shown throughout your PhD journey. It was mid-February 2020, and the whole world was just beginning to understand the gravity of the COVID-19 pandemic. Chen reached out to me with a message, crucial and urgent: minor reminder, the coronavirus is getting stronger. Please be careful with human contact. It seems like the Dutch government is not taking this too seriously. But with my experience, I recommend stocking on some necessities. Since almost all things like bread and potatoes will start to be sold out, you can see this starting to happen in Germany. So I looked at my response and I said, yeah, but how serious can it be? They said there's one case in Tilburg. I think it's just gonna pass. So she writes back, please, my advice is at least stock up on some items. I went to the shops. I started to find, seriously, there is a little bit of dwindling of hand sanitizers. So I said, I will listen, because she was very persistent. And I must say that your foresight provided invaluable, because I did not panic, because I did have enough toilet paper, thanks to you. So my initial skepticism, and sometimes, as many of you know, Chen can be very stubborn, turned to gratitude as I stocked up on these essential. So thank you for the timely and considerate advice during those uncertain times. Also, your politeness and firmness were exactly what was needed. Reflecting on our journey together, it actually started in 2016 when you joined the MPP program specializing in social protection, and I became your master thesis supervisor with a thesis, if you recall, called Subjective Well-Being and the Chinese Hukou System. I went through the old records of the thesis evaluation, and I found that in conclusion, I said Chen was pleasant to work with, did her tasks independently, asked for help when she needed, and followed instructions when given. Congratulations on a well-written thesis. What you concluded in your master research back then, that after there is progress, where basic needs are starting to be fulfilled and absolute poverty drops, we need to shift the focus because the shadows of inequality stretch across regions and between urban and rural realms. And the quest for understanding must become deeper, so it's not enough only to advise or revise policies from the top down, we must also work together on social fabric, bridging gaps and dissolving distances. And your main conclusion was that the old hukou system, a relic of its time, needs to be looked at. We need to look at things in a different lens and start to maybe also dissolve some distances, especially between local hosts and migrant, which proved to be important for your thesis now. These insights led you to the transition from a master's student to a PhD candidate, as you mentioned also in your defense today. Initially, your PhD proposal focused on technological change, labor market inequality. And as you went deeper, you shifted your focus to income decomposition. Pierre provided extremely valuable support in the early stages, and he helped refine your ideas. Over time, your interest in decomposition grew, and it led us to invite Denisa to join the team. And eventually, Pierre passed the torch on to Cahal, who became part of your research effort as well. And this collaborative spirit and dedication that you demonstrated in putting the team also together was important for producing your thesis. Beyond your research, you have been also an exceptional teaching assistant in the MPP program, particularly within the social protection specialization. Your support, kindness, and willingness to assist your peers has been always deeply appreciated. Every moment of hard work, travel between Maastricht, Germany, Luxembourg, conferences, seminars, virtual meetings, lunch meetings, long working evenings, has led you to uncover new insights, proving that even the most daunting academic tasks can be tackled with a bit of humor, sometimes mixed with tears, a bit of screaming, a lot of caffeine, and of course, some really, really good Chinese tea. Also training sessions on how to make Chinese tea. And of course, the support of your husband and your loved ones. Thank you for bringing such a delightful mix of seriousness to your research journey. There is a Chinese proverb that says, blue comes from the indigo plant, but is bluer than the plant itself. I'm not gonna even try to say it in Chinese. I tried, but it was very difficult, so. This beautifully captures your journey. It reflects how a student can surpass the mentor, much like the color blue derived from the indigo plant can be more vibrant than its source. And this saying, for me, symbolizes the pride we feel when a student like you excels beyond expectations. Your focus, commitment have been key to your success. Even when faced with complex and unexpected challenges, you took ownership of your work and pursued your vision with determination, while your strong sense of direction may have occasionally led to moments of stubbornness. I think this trait has fueled your persistence, allowing you to produce work of excellent quality. Chen, your thesis is a reflection of your ambition and confidence, and this is the result of your determinations. You are a respectful, kind-hearted person, and you have approached every challenge with positivity and resilience. So on behalf of Cahal, Denisa, and myself, I want to extend our heartfelt congratulations to you, but also to your mother, your stepdad who are here, also to your dad and family, friends who are watching. Your granddad will be very proud, but especially to Lungwen. I have to thank you, who also joined on some research dinners at times. He did tell you that finishing will be the thank you that you can give him. And I think this thesis embodies the sentiment. I want to congratulate you on reaching this milestone and looking forward to what comes next.
Oh, thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Dear Dr. Gong, also on behalf of Maastricht University and School of Business and Economics, I congratulate you with the degree that you have acquired. Now I want to give the floor to the two people that are online to hand over their congratulations. So, Professor Zimmermann.
Yeah, thank you very much. Congratulations from my side. Excellent work. And I wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Professor Lee.
I would also like to join the congratulations on incredible achievement. I believe your hard work and the dedication have paid off, and wish you all the success in your future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And herewith I close the session. The audience can go already to the reception place, or you can take a photo here if you like. We take a photo with the two people online on the background. So I just ask everybody to stand here with your degree, of course.